What is it that looks at the mind? What is it that is aware? What is awareness? I mean, it's a very simple thing if you actually look at it. But because the mind is now programmed and super fine-tuned to look at outside, and there's so many distractions outside, whether it is problems or whether it is the beauty, you're always distracted. I'm not saying that don't look at objects. What I'm saying is to look at objects from its source. Because when you see everything from its source, you realize that everything is the source.
Greetings, future fossils. This is Michael Garfield, welcoming you to another episode of the podcast that explores our place in time. Insofar as you'll indulge me in the notion that time is a landscape and the years arranged in helices, then 3 years behind us down this spiral staircase, I was the editor for a non-duality web magazine called Globalish that explored the theme of our prior and always already non-separation, the truth beneath our concepts of duality and unity, the undivided fabric of experience that we then carve up into self and other. Another 2 years down the spiral, I was editor for soulpurpose.com, another web mag that explored the vanguard of visionary artists, triangulating our transcultural identity through clever remixes of the imagery of our vast inheritance of world wisdom traditions. And even though this show seems to have taken on the character of exploring the ethical issues that arise at our weirding boundary with technology and our increasingly magical and mystifying technological landscapes, all of these things converge together at the horizon, explored in this week's episode with Archan Nair, an absolutely awesome artist out of India. Archan's an awesome artist, but the thing I think that he does best is help communicate the wonder and the mystery of everything at a time when it is all too easy to slump back into the laziness of fear, small-minded desperation, a comparably unimaginative response to the intensity and brilliance of our lives. If nothing else, I hope this episode infects you, as it infected me, with a deeper appreciation for how ridiculously weird the world is, and how great that is, and how this is a kind of opening or opportunity for each of us, an invitation into fullness, luminosity, and presence that was always there and always will be there, regardless of the circumstances of our lives. We don't talk much in this episode about Archan's work itself, but it deserves to be said that his work portrays a kind of all-embracing tantric attitude, a love for both the high technology and human body that combine as media, through which he celebrates a riotous and ecstatic experience of the human being, even as it dissolves into the solvent hypermodern substrate of our lives. Like a good psychedelic experience, Archan's work combines and remixes the body and the landscape, the waking and the dreaming, stillness and motion, rupturing the planes and the perspectives of the modern painting. He's worked with a lot of celebrities, and he's got a huge social media following, but that's not why I find him interesting. Archan Nair's an inspiration, to me anyway, and I hope to you as well. But before we get into this episode, a few quick shout-outs to new Patreon supporters Craig Tilley, Joe Perez, Lori Walters, Joe Wine, and Rachel Foster, as well as Jacob Amen, who upped his pledge this week. I am deeply appreciative to every single person who supports this show with any amount of money on Patreon. It helps me out immensely to maintain the time in my life necessary to produce each episode of this show on my own and to grind away on my book, How to Live in the Future, and to share a constant stream of interesting news in the Future Fossils Facebook group without any institutional funding or passive income. If I could supplement this podcast with more speaking gigs and more gigs doing live notes for meetings and presentations inside organizations, both of which I love to do and both of which I find contribute to the same project, the surfacing of insights and the facilitation of vital conversations, well, then I would do that. And if you have opportunities for that, please send them my way. But in the meantime, this is it, folks. This podcast is a labor of the heart and, strangely, my full-time job. So that is why I make such a point of giving so much back to every Patreon supporter, including exclusive and early release episodes, original music like what you're hearing now, and more. And for everyone who has been sharing this show with your friends, who's been rating and reviewing it on iTunes, I thank you also. It's making a difference. Future Fossils is slowly but surely making it into the ears and minds of the people who benefit, and for that, I am, again, hugely grateful to you. So that's enough of that. Buckle up and enjoy this lovely conversation with visionary artist and digital weirdo Archan Nair. Awesome.
So this is unreal because I've been listening to your podcasts in between. So like speaking to you live is like a strange thing, man. Because I'm always listening to you speaking to other people.
Well, that's
so now
cool.
you speak to me.
I don't think my guests ordinarily have been listening to the show. So that's cool. That's a new thing. I appreciate that.
So,
thanks.
I got hooked onto your podcast through Hannah, and then I listened to a few more episodes, and now like I use the Overcast app, so you are in my favorites list. So when I'm jogging or walking or just moving around, I'm listening.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, I was just actually I'll return the back scratching. I was just watching your neuro learning creativity and consciousness Photoshop session on YouTube. I was just watching you talk about going through the whole process and moving stuff in and out.
Fantastic.
It was wonderful because I just picked up an iPad and I am finally, like, after years of having a dust gathering Wacom tablet and just like not connecting with it, I'm finally like, okay, it's time to get over my thing and just like jump into this space where everyone is waiting. And I feel like that, maybe that's a good place to start with you, because I feel like for me, adopting new technology and like adapting to that learning curve, like getting the upgrade, it feels like, I don't know, there's two ways you could talk about, like the psychedelic experience or like dying, where you have to let go of the familiar thing and everyone's waiting for you on the other side, like, come on, it's fine, it's totally safe, this is fun. And I think that, like there's that part of it, that emotional part of it, of like the give and take. So, but you're so you just seem to absolutely like relish in and embrace the new opportunities, and I'm curious what your relationship is with all of that.
Man, I think what happened was this started when, like, during my teenage years. As a kid, I was never so much into art. My school especially was really focused into art and crafts. They were like really, really heavy with drama, acting, arts, craft, music. And they were not much into like studies and stuff. Like studies were a part because of the government policies and stuff. But they were really focused into extracurricular activities. And I found them really boring because the teachers were like teaching in such traditional ways, in the sense that they were like, oh, you need to do it like this, and it has to be just like this. And with me, I feel like my brain has never been wired in a way where it has to be done in a particular way. For me, it has to be explorative. I need to experiment with things, since a kid. Like, I always wanted to just venture out and try new things and just explore. And I was never inclined towards art because of that, but I used to participate in all these competitions. My parents used to send me to like art competitions, and I did fairly well. So I realized I was good, but I was never really into it. But man, like on my studies and like whenever like in my classes or like studying at home, my dad was like really strict about like like getting good grades and stuff. So I used to act like I used to be studying on my table, and I used to like act as if I'm studying, but I used to be doodling. So whatever pen or pencil I used to have, I used to doodle in all my books and all my sketchbooks, all my notebooks, like they were just filled with doodles. And I was just randomly making all these abstract forms and shapes, and it was all just coming out. Like I was not even like aware about, what am I doing? Do they have any meanings? Nothing. It was just flowing out. But like, and obviously, like when you grow up, you're so conditioned to do things in a certain way. There was a large break in between, like after my high school and before I started doing this again full time. I was really not, being creative at that moment, and I was just, stuck in this whirlpool of people wanting me to do certain things a certain way, the conditioning of the society, going through this form of struggle, and going through a very low phase in life. But now when I look back into all of that, and when I see it, I realize that all of that was really happening. Like it was like probably a stepping stone of what I really wanted to do later in life. But technology was something which really blew my mind the first time when I encountered it. I remember I had a 486. I don't know if you remember this, the 486 computer. It was before any Intel Pentium. It was a 64 megahertz computer, and it was freaking expensive. I remember it was about $3,000 computer without any CD-ROM, and we used to have these floppy disks, the 3.5-inch ones, and we had this Windows 3.1, and I was blown away. I was like, holy shit, this is amazing. And you know what happened? We got a free game of Doom. There was this famous game at that time, Doom.
Yeah.
And I installed I installed it into the computer, and I launched it from Windows 3.1. And it was getting stuck on like the front page, like the launching screen. I was getting sad, like, what the fuck? I mean, how do I solve this? I went back into MS-DOS because it was a dual operating system. You could also work on MS-DOS through commands. And I launched it from the DOS command prompt, and it worked. And I was like, man, I'm a genius. This is amazing. And I was self-motivated that I'm a technologist. As a kid, the ego came up. Yeah. The ego was like, holy shit, man, you're a genius. Like you figured this out. And I remember I was telling my mom, like, I'm so good. I just figured this out. And I mean, of course, it was just a fluke. But I actually got hooked, and in my school, I was one of the rare kids who had a computer. So everyone used to come to my house, and we used to explore, and I used to show them how everything is, and it was fascinating. And then my neighbor, he got inspired by me, and he got his first Pentium computer, and that was like insanely fast. I was like, holy shit, how can it be so fast? And then I got a Pentium 2, and then how everything started increasing. And then I realized that I started exploring tools because of this, like because of technology. I started exploring, before even Photoshop, there was the PaintShop Pro. I used to design websites, and I used to make graphics out of that. And I started learning my basics from there. And I was always fascinated with all these tools, all these softwares. I used to install them, download them, whatever. The internet came by, blew my mind again. And I was like, man, this is insane. Like every time people just keep creating these new different tools for themselves. Consciousness through people creates different tools, and consciousness itself absorbs it and creates something new out of it. So it's this cycle which is going on, where the spirit manifests into intelligence. Intelligence creates new intelligence through tools, and other intelligences absorb those tools to create new forms of art or new experiences or new tools, which in turn absorb new tools to create new tools, and that is the effect which has been happening. If you look at from the hardware perspective, as technology improve and evolve, or if you look at software or tools perspective, where people are using those tools to create something amazing. So that has always been fascinating, and that has always fascinated me in terms of like how can we use these tools to create something new. And that is why I love exploring, whether it is virtual reality or whether it is creating on the iPad. And like how you said it, like I have this Intuos 4 Wacom, which I got it back in 2009, and I've been doing all my work on that since then. And it's just when the iPad Pro, the new one came out, I got the iPad Pro and I've been hooked onto it, man. It's just incredible. And it just shows that, like I have a beast of a computer right in front of me where I can do all these 3D modelings and stuff. And now we have this small compact display, which is absolutely fantastic, which has an incredible speed, which handles all these big, huge canvases, and you can just do anything, like exactly what you can do on the computer. So how everything has just shrunk into this tiny space, and you can create infinite manifestations out of it.
I like the way that your creative vision is embedded in the clearly like the sort of tone or flavor of that Hindu cosmology, like the emanations from the cosmic mind, that all of this stuff that of course we're just going to come up with ever richer and more complex manifestations of Maya and
yes.
Right. So like in listening to you talk about all this, there's this sense of how our environments shape us, right? And we shape the tools shape us. So as our instruments and the content that we create with them becomes richer, then it seems to require from us a boost of intelligence and like a boost of our language and our perception kind of go together. And so I'm curious what you think about the way that these new forms of art might be changing us, or like, how the evolution of the human being is trending along with all of this, this just extraordinary creative power that each of us has now.
Man, it's just, I feel, like, it's just been like expanding as if like, there was a point in source when everything just sprung up, right? And it just keeps expanding, and everything keeps remixing with each other and keeps creating new things. Similarly, if you see right now, like if you actually see like in a short way how everything was very traditional before the modern technological era, which happened in the recent years. Before everything creative people were doing everything by hand, whether it was music or dance or even cooking and even painting. And they were all like these traditional tools which were there, and people were using it for a very long time. And suddenly the computer comes in, and and technology comes in, and people start creating stuff on the computer. And people start coding, and people start looking at recipes online, and taking influences from like other recipes and other cultures and bringing it into their own. And it's insane, like how everything is just like it's clearly a fractal effect, right? Like everything just, it's never ending, like it's just self-replicating. Like how consciousness, because it doesn't have any form in the physical dimension, also creates so many different layers that it doesn't have any end to it, like it's just going on and on. And the most amazing part for me is not just like how, say, for example, I have a particular tool and I create that as a tool because someone else has created, but how I can collaborate with someone using the internet, sitting in like the opposite part of the planet, and using their skills to bring with my skills. So, for example, I've been doing a lot of VR projects. So I just create the visuals, but the coding is done by someone else, and they don't have any idea about the visual part, like how to create the visuals. But they're using technology, right? So how their knowledge of technology, which they gained throughout their years using other people's work or their interests or gathering knowledge from the internet, has helped them create their own skill set. And then using my skill set, we mix them together to bring out an idea which just came inside our consciousness like that, and we create something new out of it. And how insane is that? Like, you couldn't even conceive this, like, say, 5 or 10 years back, that we would be sitting here doing this, Yeah. We basically take all our memories and all our stories, which we have gathered through our past and our journey, and we create our future accordingly. Like, we think, oh, this might happen because this happened. But man, we have no clue about anything. I mean, you and me are sitting here right now talking, but tomorrow you might be doing something. I mean, you might be like in space or in a plane, in an Airbus, Emirates, doing a podcast with, some crazy Emirates designer, I mean, just throwing that out. And you never know. I mean, we just keep thinking that we might be doing this because we're doing it like in this particular pattern. But man, things are just happening on their own, and you just can't imagine the future, because the future has been designed by the spirit, which has designed everything and which is in everything. And yeah, and it's beyond conceivable, and that is what is so exciting, right? Like, that we have an idea about how things are just evolving and how things are going in a particular pattern, but man, we just can't conceive it. We just can't like bring them into a particular vision, you know. And
yeah. So you remind me of how excited I am when I'm not like unhealthily preoccupied with my personal problems. Right? like that there's this there's like a baseline enthusiasm for how fucking amazing and awesome the world is.
Yes.
And I pave over that all the time with worry about the daily stuff. So I'm curious because I've heard from people that like David Pierce, he talks about engineering hedonics, meaning like if you could genetically alter your kid to be 5% happier than you are, don't you have an ethical responsibility to do so? So he talks about people have the hedonic set point. And that's like some people are just born happier. They got more of the juice. I'm hoping that that's not the case with you, and that you have some insight for me, an ordinarily melancholic and introspective dude, how you stay clear-eyed about your excitement for all of this stuff, and like how you allow it to continue to like propel and motivate you.
Man, that's such a beautiful question, and I mean it's something which is so deep and so intimate to all of us, and especially like in my journey, and I'm sure like this is quite similar in everyone's journey, which you touched upon. I feel that like it's so important, and especially these two aspects of where we find content and happiness and positivity, and where we have all these troubles with life, relationships, finances, whatever, like they come in different forms and how they affect us. And I feel that there's such two integral parts going side by side together, which are needed as well. And I feel in my journey, the part which we don't like that much, where we are troubled or we are sad, has played a major role. I mean, naturally, I've been a very positive person throughout my life. Like I've always been a very happy kid. I've always thought about things very deeply. Since a kid, I've been a very spiritual person as well, but not like godly spiritual, but like always introspected and contemplated why are we here and what existence is. And that has gone side by side by the happenings or the events in my journey. Like, for example, it's all started when I lost my dad. I mean, I had an amazing life. He passed away when I was 14 and I was very close to him. And that really shook me up, like that really disturbed me in a very deep way. Like I really went into a really sad state for about 1.5, 2 years, and I was not able to come out of it. Finally I did, because obviously life takes you out and it starts showing you the way and gives you all these distractions and you start flowing. But the next 10 years which came after that were the most important times of my journey, where I started contemplating, because I started seeing a pattern where like certain events happening at certain points, and then certain events happening at other certain points was somehow coinciding with each other. Like I could clearly see a link between them. Like all these events happening, they're just not happening randomly. They just seem to have some form of pattern, and that is what started exciting me. That man, like things are not happening randomly for sure. They seem chaotic and random, but they are super intelligently placed. Even though like on a macro and a micro scale, we all seem like bacterias floating around, and like we probably don't have much importance. But man, everything has its place. Like that is the reason it's all there. It's been designed and manifested in a very beautiful way. And I started looking into things deeply. Like that is where my journey started. But because of that pain is the reason I started looking at things. If I was like extremely happy all the time, and if I was not affected, and if I had a careless attitude, I probably wouldn't be looking at it deeply. It was because I was being affected by my thoughts, by this mental construct which developed over these years, and the conditioning. And because I was listening to this voice inside me, which everyone has, very seriously, in the sense that this is me, I was taking this as an identity very seriously. That was the reason I was being affected. And because of this journey, the next 10 years, and then obviously the past 5-6 years as well, as everything keeps polishing and as you keep refining into your own being, and as you keep contemplating, I think it polishes more. Like you come out more and you understand that there are two parts of this entire thing which I was able to figure out. One was the theoretical part where we come across knowledge outside of us, like through knowledge, through meeting people, through the internet, videos, articles, books, and we take it as an intellectual understanding, right? For example, everything is consciousness. The universe is conscious and everything is consciousness and we are the universe. So, okay, that comes as an intellectual understanding. But on a day-to-day life, it does not come as a practical, solution. I mean, you and me understand that, oh, I am conscious and I'm the universe, oh, I feel love. But when you have a problem, when you have an argument happening with your family, like a trouble happening in your house or a financial crisis, you don't think about, oh, I am the universe and everything is beautiful. You're like, fuck, I need to take care of this, How am I going to solve this? There's an issue. Oh man, your mind comes, oh, what if that person does this? What if this happens tomorrow? In a practical level, it does not work. So I was disturbed. I was like, man, this is not helping. Like, I am the universe, which is right, but how does this work? I mean, it's all bullshit. I mean, I need to really get into it. I need to see there must be something deeper behind all of this. If this is coming up again and again, if my mind is torturing me again and again, if my psychological self is really unstable, that means that there is something much more deeper. I need to go more deeper. And that is where I kept my search going. And I finally found, and I mean, for me, to give you a basis, I follow Advaita Vedanta. I mean, that has been something which I have been like really, really rooted to, because it gave me the biggest clarity, and the understanding became a true self-realization, and that is what I was looking at. Not exterior intellectual knowledge, but how do you make it a part of your self-understanding, self-realization, where your mind basically understands what it is, where its true source is, and it quietens up. It becomes much more peaceful and, it calms down. Now, the nature of the mind which is not just the brain, but, the thoughts, feelings, sensations, which are all clubbed together, which we call the mind, because we don't know where the mind is biologically also, but a mixture of all of this. The nature of the mind is object oriented, right? Like, it's always looking outside, because that is how nature has designed us. Because if we are in a physical plane trying to survive, it's always looking at all these sensations happening outside. So sight, sound, smell, and all the activities which are happening outside. So all these activities which are happening outside are being used by the mind to absorb information, process that information, and give signals by the brain to the body to do certain actions. So we're so used to this programming since a kid. So as soon as you're born, you have no idea about language, right? You have no idea about who your mother is, who your father is. There's just this feeling which is there. You're experiencing life as it is. You're just being. There are no thoughts inside you, because there's no idea or there's no learning of language at that time. And then after a few years, you start learning language because everyone is teaching you things. Oh, you are this, this is that, this is that. And so language, which is a concept, which is an idea created by the human being through its limited mind, is fed inside you. And you start looking at your world around you, at your environment and all your activities, including your thought process, through this thing called language. And you create this information system and look at everything through language and interpret everything through language itself, which is created as a limited module of working by the human machine, by the human system. And so it's limited already. It's limited. You're learning a limited language and conceiving an infinite, incredible universe world through this finite language. And because your mind is finite, obviously because it's looking at objects, you look at all of this and then you start learning knowledge and everything accordingly. Now what happens is that the basis of everything, which is your identity, because you feel this body, this limited perception through which you look at everything, and you feel the sensations of the body, whether it is pain, joy, happiness, excitement, whether you're high on LSD, you look everything through this body. So you're so connected to the body, your thoughts, which is non-stop going on inside you in your waking life, So you feel this is you. The thoughts which are coming inside you is you, right? Like, because you've been listening to it since like you were aware of language and the conceptual world. So the mind, the thoughts are you, the sensations happening inside are you, because everything is so close, it's all binded. So how consciousness basically manifests into body and mind and thoughts, and it's all so closely linked that there is no difference. It's a very subtle difference. But what really started happening was I started seeing that, I started looking at dreams. I was really fascinated by dreams, like I was like, man, I'm lying down in this bed and I'm in deep sleep. Before deep sleep, I go into this dream world. And in the dream world, I'm somewhere else. And I'm having exactly the same sensations. I'm talking to people, I'm eating, I'm smelling, I'm looking at the world. Everything feels real. I'm jumping, if I'm moving around, I'm flying, whatever. And how is it that my body is lying in this bed, but my conscious experience is exactly the same? I'm having another experience in some other space, in some other time, which is created by the mind itself. So that was something which all of these things started aligning, like the identity part, where I'm taking my identity so seriously. And then this parting away of the body in the dream state, and the mind in the dream state, and the mind creating different worlds in the dream state. I was like, man, there's something not correct, there's something which we are thinking about life, about our identity, which is not right. I have to look at this deeper. And I started realizing, and obviously through the help of gurus like Ramana Maharishi, I follow him very closely, and Nisargadatta Maharaj, they opened it up. And I was like, man, this is it. This is exactly it. We are not the identity. We are not this body and mind we think it is. This is something which has been conditioned inside us. This is something which has been programmed inside us through language, through our limited perception and senses. And we believe this is us because it's so closely connected to us. Not saying that, when you feel pain, this is not you feeling pain. This is the body through which you are experiencing life is experiencing pain. But you are the pure awareness which looks at the body, which looks at the mind, which looks at the no mind and the no body, which is in the dream state. And when in deep sleep, where there's nothing happening, where you have where there's no experience of time, where there's no experience of body and mind, when everything is absolutely blank, but that awareness is still there, you're still conscious. So the primary source is that you are pure consciousness. And there is no object to it, right? Like if you actually look at, if I ask you, hey Michael, are you aware of this sound coming to you? Yes, you are aware. Are you aware of the visuals coming to you? Yes, you are aware. Are you aware of the room you're sitting in? Yes, you are aware. You're aware of your body, you're aware of the thoughts going in. But this awareness which we're looking at, you're even aware of this awareness, right? But what is the objective quality of this awareness? There's no quality. It's just a feeling. But this awareness is constant and stable throughout all forms, throughout all your activities, throughout all waking states, deep sleep state, and dream state. It's the only constant thing which is always there. But everything else is happening. It's constantly changing. Our bodies are changing. Our cells are changing. Our organs are changing. Our thoughts are changing according to the new information we perceive. Our environment is constantly changing. The sky is changing. The water is changing. Everything is fucking changing, man. But this awareness is always there. We're always aware. And that was it, man. Like that, it took me about 10 years to figure this out. Like, because obviously it does not happen overnight, right? Like, you learn so much. You learned all these intellectual knowledge. We learn all of this taking 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And it's not easy to get rid of it in a night's time. And then all these distractions which are always bombarded to you, which sink us down, like how you said. It's so human, like it's so natural. But I feel that it's an intelligent design. The mind is designed to be like this. The thoughts are designed to be like this, to say out crap, but at the same time to also say out some of the most beautiful ideas which could ever come across. But since the mind is designed to perceive time as in past and future, which does not even exist. Our only experience right now is that we are present. If I ask you hey Michael, what did you have yesterday for lunch? And can you experience that again? You won't be able to experience it, right? Like, how can you experience that again? It's just in your memory. It's just a figment of imagination or thought right now. But as an experience, the only thing which you'll experience is right now. And you just can't even go to the future and experience it. Because everything is right now. Nothing is happening in the future. Nothing can happen in the past. because how the mind is structured, they're all stories and memories, because how we can perceive things and how we can store memories, we are able to access them as clusters of information through visuals or through text or however the brain is designed.
Okay, so you're touching on something that I think about a lot.
Okay.
I notice myself thinking about it a lot, right? Which is, and this is great because I don't think we've really gotten into the Advaita Vedanta stuff on this show yet, and I'm quite fond of the entire tradition of non-dual philosophy. It's very cool. At any rate, the way that noticing memory, and the Buddha talks about this, noticing the pattern of memory, of expectation, you start to see this, you disclose this matrix of relationships, and your experience of time becomes a sort of networked landscape of possibility and conditioning that exists within now. It's an object. It's a subset of the present moment.
Yes.
So I feel like something like that is happening for us because of our embeddedness in the internet, that because we live in this networked media environment, the human consciousness is having to, that there is actually a sort of incentive toward awakening in the design of the infrastructure, not intentional necessarily, but Doug Rushkoff talks about it in Present Shock, that your whole past is on Facebook. Google knows what you are going to ask it before you even ask it. And so our pasts and our futures in the digital space have all collapsed into this moment, this one present moment. And so in that way, the systems that we've designed are reflecting this sort of cosmic truth about time, or a more complex and sort of comprehensive and probably more accurate way of thinking about time as this fractal that is all sort of simultaneous. But anyway, the point is, you talked about seeing the patterns of synchronicity and that being a key part of this. And I remember Richard Doyle talking to a web seminar class about, in the writings of Philip K. Dick, he was talking about how paranoia is where you start to see that everything is connected, but you still are attached to the identity of like you said, that inner sheath of everything that's been so close to you the whole time. It's, you've never known what it sounds like with that hum off, with the refrigerator is unplugged. And so I'm curious, what do you see in this nexus of, on the one hand, a really potentially beautiful, transcendent opportunity here for the human species, almost as a matter of necessity, to move into this new space, this new understanding. But then also the fact that there's a good chance for a lot of burnout, paranoia, madness. The change is coming really fast these days. And so, what is the image of how we could, what can we do for people who are struggling with this fluidity and being able to surf and embrace all of this? I don't know. There's just so much to go from there, but I'll take it whichever way you want.
And okay, so this is how I feel the universe is. Of course, I know nothing, and I'm just creating some kind of another idea or concept, but to me it feels like the universe, which is the conscious universe, is a spirit which is without form or dimension, and is super intelligent, obviously, because of how it's created and creating everything. Now what the spirit does is, because it does not have form, it creates these calculations and elements such as the DNA and forms of nature, different DNAs, which basically include information to create the basis of life, right? And then it springs out into form. So all these different billions of forms which we see, I'm just talking about this planet, let alone other planets. And all these forms which spring out, they start evolving, it creates new information from its environment, it upgrades itself, creates new information, including human beings. So how I see it is that I feel that the spirit basically manifests into form, which basically manifests itself into form so that it can experience life, so that it can evolve and become more complex. I'm not sure if it has a purpose or not, because I mean, obviously it's in its own intelligence, which it must be having a purpose. But I mean, I'm no one to say if it has a purpose. But to me, it feels this, just looking at everything around, that it comes out into form and then it complexifies itself into forms. But now, when it comes into form, it does not know. It does. The most amazing part, which I feel over here, is it forgets that it itself is the spirit. It creates bodies. It entangles itself into the bodies so that it creates a separate identity. So everyone who feels, not just humans but animals or plants, which themselves feel that they are a separate self, have to have that feeling of a separate self so that they can function. For example, if you are the spirit and you manifest into a form, and you know that in the form that everyone is the spirit and I am the spirit and I am everything, it is equivalent to not having any form. Because then it would not function, it would just be still and it would just be there. It would be like everything is absolutely fine. There's nothing to do because I am everything, right? So, I mean, just imagine, like, if I become into everything and if I know that I am everything, and if I'm not the separate self, I would just be stagnant. Nothing would move. And so I feel that having this sense of identity is such a crucial part. But it works as two ways. One, obviously, to function, to evolve, to grow, and to create extremely complex worlds through nature, through technology, and however it proceeds further. But also to grow deeper into the understanding and to go back to its source. So this contrast, I call it the contrast, basically. So the contrast is so important and vital for everyone, including me. Everyone has this. That this identity which we think we are, which we take so seriously. Oh, I am this body. I am a male. I am Archan. I am an artist. I am this. This I am, which we mistakenly think is the body and the mind and the thoughts and all the stories which we have gathered throughout our journey, which we call it the past, and our relationships and everything, which we think are us. We derive our sense of identity from our relationships as well. We take them so seriously, and then we are so entangled with all those stories that anything which happens, anything which touches them, which disturbs its flow, we get disturbed by it, right? I mean, that is what really happens. So, for example, on a small day-to-day basis, if I am expecting a particular result out of, say, I filed a government paper, or a relationship like with my sister is not happening particularly fine, and there is some kind of argument or whatever, it disturbs me because I derive my sense of identity from not just this body, but the activities it's doing through relationships or through other activities it needs to perform to do certain things, to do certain actions in the future. So we take this so seriously because we've been conditioned. It's all programmed. Everything is a freaking programming, and it's so embedded inside us. It's so freaking rooted inside us, especially because of, I feel the education system has played a major part into this. Not just our parents or a family, but the education system, which does not focus on learning, but focuses on objects outside. So when you start asking as a kid, because when you're like 4 or 5 years old, you have no sense of like, oh, what will happen to me? How's my body image? Oh, how's my social media likes? Nothing. You're just like flowing. You're just free. You're just being. But when you start going to school and you start learning and this exam system thing comes into your mind, and you're like, you have to perform and you have to outbeat other kids, and you can't ask questions. Like if you start asking questions like, why does the earth revolve around the sun in an elliptical form? How can it be a vortex? Because every season doesn't seem to be the same. They keep changing. Every winter is not the same. Is it maybe happening in some other form? No, you can't ask such questions. You have to study according to the books, and you have to answer it according to the books. Or say history. What happened in 1778 during this? What happened during this? So we are constantly bombarded in our education system to look outside, to look at objects. Look outside. Everything is happening outside. And we're never asked to look inside. We're never asked to inquire inside. What is happening inside? What is it that looks at the mind? What is it that is aware? What is awareness? I mean, it's a very simple thing if you actually look at it. But because the mind is now programmed and super fine-tuned to look at outside, and there's so many distractions outside, whether it is problems or whether it is the beauty or whether it is the internet or technological tools, you're always distracted. So you're constantly like looking at objects outside instead of looking inside. I'm not saying that don't look at objects. What I'm saying is to look at objects from the real place, to look at objects from its source. Because when you see everything from its source, you realize that everything is the source. There's no separation. The separation is the only seemingly separation of the form of the body. But even if you look at the physical scale, bro, I mean, I'm not just talking about woo-woo or spiritual stuff. I'm talking about experiences and real scientific study as well. If you look at the scientific study, everything is on an atomic or on a Planck scale. There's no separation between anything. The entire universe is one. It's all space, and all these forms are forms coming in space. For example, this building you're sitting in, before this building came into being, it was space, right? And when it came into being, it's just sharing that space. It's just that there's another form there, but there's no separation from the space. You won't say this building is another space and the outside space is separate. It's still sharing that space. So we are all sharing the same space, which is the conscious space, which is the conscious spirit.
Yeah. So in looking at this into the deep future and deep past, I had this thought that we have been in virtual reality this whole time because, like you said earlier, it's just all conceptual representations, like layers and layers of interpretation being presented in this highly abstracted, super intricate estimation, like all this stuff about how your brain interposes, like it's got the texture brush, like
yes.
if you're looking at the area in front of you or around, your focal area, and your brain just sort of interposes that pattern over and over to make, I'm sure that's what's going on. And then, you can look at somebody's in their blind spot in the right spot and their face disappears. So like we're inhabiting this virtual reality already in that sense. And it's kind of, we're just building an extra virtual reality inside the one that we've already got. But, it's funny you talking about the way that coming up into school, this new social awareness reinforces that social identity, reinforces that bounded enveloped self. And, I've heard from people who, I knew a guy who was a student of Ramesh Balsekar's actually for a while.
Oh, yes.
And
so Balsekar is, Ramesh Balsekar is the student of Nisargadatta Maharaj.
Right, yeah.
Yes,
so this guy, Alan Shelton, who lives in San Diego, and I used to work with him on an Advaita Vedanta web magazine, actually.
Awesome.
And so he was telling me that he tried for 6 weeks to go through his entire life without using the word I. Like he never spoke in the first person. And he said it worked, that without constantly referencing the identity through language, he was able to draw his attention away from it. And so it's interesting in this sense that you're talking about, there's no inside, no outside. I think people get tripped up on that. It's like you can actually go deeper into yourself by turning the attention away from what you ordinarily think of as inside of you, which is like the social construct. So, I mean, but then again, we're getting into these, like, what is it, the massive demographic migration. So like everyone's living in the city now, and it's only going to be more of everyone living in the city. And so the question of like, how do you find that solitude? How do you turn the attention away from that constant reinforcement of the social identity when we're living in such a density of social interactions is a really bizarre, teasing question, I think.
I feel that this has to do with something which you asked the last time, which I did not address as well, about how there's so much amazingness and awe everywhere, but at the same time, there is this space where we get stuck into, especially like if you look at, for example, if you look at the world of the internet, where everyone's hooked onto, and all these different social media platforms, whether it's Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram, And there are two kinds of things which are happening here. A set of people who are wired a particular way derive obviously a sense of identity from that. For example, kids who are hooked onto Snapchat, they look at their friends' feed, they look at these amazing filters, and instead of accepting who they truly are, they put on new masks on them to look more beautiful. They try different angles and they take like a gazillion photos every day. Instead of them looking at mirrors right now and appreciating the way they truly feel, they rely on an app which creates a fake image, creates infinite angles, which is not really their true face, to create an image of themselves which psychologically they believe they are. And then they feel happy about it. But in return, they are actually not happy. They are actually trying to seek, and they're desiring something which is far more superior. And then that leads to other things where they go in for surgeries and everything later on in their life. And then there are certain people who derive their sense of awness from, say, technology, say from news, say what Elon Musk is doing right now looks absolutely fantastic for the future. Or when you look at National Geographic videos, or when you look at like anything, I mean, look at tools, or when you start, or even let's leave the internet, let's go out for a walk in nature, and you come across this species of mushrooms which are like, holy shit, how can this be so tiny and growing up in like the bark of a tree inside this hole? I mean, how is this possible? Like, I mean, it's just happening everywhere. I mean, this is insane. So I mean, it's crazy that these billion neurons functioning inside us are just firing on their own. I mean, of course, not on their own randomly, but obviously an intelligence is at place which we can't describe or comprehend. But I feel that there's certain people who are deriving this sense of awe because of, one, how they're wired, and also two, because of the contrasts they have gone through in their life, and they probably come to realize that, man, it's all beautiful, it's all in a flow, there's no control over anything, and let's just, surrender to what is and just be. And there's certain people who are trying to control their life because the mind is like, oh, I'm the supreme controller of everything, I control my life, and I will do how things have to be. And so I need to be in this particular image, say a selfie, and I'll look a certain way. That's my control. So I feel that both of them are absolutely beautiful, because if this one was not there, the contrast, you wouldn't be admiring the awe. The reason you've reached the awe is because maybe in a very subtle way you went through pain, or you went through struggles, or maybe you were just genuinely gifted by the spirit to be manifested in this beautiful brain mind combination, And yeah, I mean, it's bizarre. At the same time, it's a mind fuck to even think about how there are infinite patterns of each of us as well. Like, there's no one of us which is exactly the same. Like, I was having this conversation the other day with a very close relative of mine, a friend of mine actually, and they've had body issues all their life. And I was like, man, I mean, look at a tree. Let's go to a mango yard, where like a farmer is cultivating all these mango trees. Can you pick up one tree which is exactly the same? You'll find all are mango trees, all are the same species creating the same fruit. Not one fruit will have the same mango taste. Not one mango tree will bear the same kind of shape of fruit, the skin texture, or the size. They will all sprout in different times, different sizes. Not each tree will have the same size, shape. You can't pick up one twig out of one tree and say they're the same exact pattern. They're all different patterns. Even if you find two trees which are short and bulky, and you take out one twig, you'll obviously find a difference in them. You take everything in life, in every species, even an ant, on a micro scale, when we look from a human perspective, they all look the same. But you actually zoom in with a magnifying glass or a microscope, they'll have different patterns.
Yeah, they all have a different barcode number on them.
Yeah, exactly. And they're all doing different things. They all are wired also differently. They're all moving at different speeds. And that's fascinating. So I told them that, look at the trees. I mean, because trees they're not moving supposedly, but they are moving, obviously at a very slow speed we can't see. But if you actually see trees, they're all different shape sizes, even if it's a mango tree. So why can't humans be different shape sizes, forms, activities, actions with different mindsets and brain activities? And that is what makes everything so freaking amazing. Because if we were all tuned in to perceive the world in so much beauty and so much awe and so much so much incrediblelessness which it has. I mean, life would be so boring, right? Life would be so boring. Like if everyone was like, "Oh, I'm so positive, I'm full of love, and everything is so amazing," man, it would become stagnant. It's because of the contrast that we keep moving ahead. That's how energy keeps moving ahead. It's like a base which is latches onto and pushes itself to the stratosphere. It's like a rocket boosting phenomena where like it needs to inject all this fire and heat and then it launches itself into the air. So that is how I see contrast. Like the contrast is so vital. That duality is so important in this non-duality. The duality is such an integral part of the non-duality. Like it's so important for us to have these different aspects, this infinite amount of diversity. That is how we propel ahead. That is how I think the spirit moves ahead. And it creates so much more newness. And it's mind blowing, bro. Like it just never ends. It just never ends. I mean, if you see everything which has happened from your childhood till now, every experience, it's all been so diverse. And everything which will happen to you, which will be all diverse. The kind of people you'll meet, the kind of experiences you'll have, the kind of music you'll create, the kind of art you'll create. I mean, no one brush stroke is the same. You'll never be able to get the exact same color. You'll never be able to, do the exact same line or have the same stroke in the same paint with the same depth. It's always unique. Everything is unique, which is insane. You were unique yesterday, and today you are another unique Michael Garfield, which is. So I feel that it's an integral part of the design of not just this dimension, but like I feel other dimensions as well. They're all constantly changing. It's like a movie. It's like a play going on. And for the movie to go on, I mean, you need to have different characters and different stories and different, music or different whatever, different mysteries to solve or whatever. So yeah, otherwise it would just be stuck in one frame.
Yeah, it's related to that question of, if you could go back to that moment, you wouldn't know because you would be the same organization of matter as you were in that moment, and therefore you wouldn't know that you had gone back into that moment. And it's just like it's just one of those like wanky armchair philosophy kind of stoner nonsense you get into when you explore that particular issue. but like the whole thing of that time being like a map of form, I think like that, and that sense of everything unrepeating, and the play of it, that the sort of flow of time is along this metabolic gradient, like you're talking about, like this, like every possible variation, every possible little rivulet and tributary as water explores every imaginable avenue down the side of the mountain. And that mountain, that gravity, that particular energy gradient from the top to the bottom of the mountain is that contrast that you're talking about. So there's like a water cycle of like involution, evolution, that there's a circulation of things emerging from and returning to. Yes. And I mean, anyway, I don't know. This isn't really funny right now. So maybe I don't get it. Because I'm like too serious talking about the cosmic water cycle.
I mean, no, bro, like connecting with water. I mean, like an example I would like to say is the ocean. So if you see the ocean, if you dive inside the ocean, there are billions of species, plants, fishes, animals, rocks. So the ocean is obviously this water body, but all these creatures and elements inside it, including the waves and the whirlpools, are the ocean. It's also. The rocks inside the ocean are the ocean. The fish inside the ocean are the ocean. But if there is no contrast inside the ocean, as in there are no predators like the sharks eating other fishes, or the fishes eating plants, then it will just be filled with forms. It will just keep reproducing. So the contrast is so important there. And this ocean is basically what I'm referring to. The ocean is the spirit, the cosmic spirit, and every one of us is inside this cosmic spirit, manifested as different forms of the spirit. But the contrast is so important for the spirit to move on. Otherwise, it will just be filled with everything, and there won't be any dynamic depth between each of it. Like it will just be filled with forms, and everything will be stagnant. Like the fishes won't even move, man. They will just be there because they're all moving here and there just to save themselves, or the rocks are moving and changing form because of the pressure of the water, and things are just, everything's changing. In fact, what I really wanted to say here was something which came up to me right now was by Nisargadatta Maharaj. He said something very amazing. He said, everything is thought. Everything we conceive is thought. The I, which is a thought, everything which even this conversation is a thought. It's all conceptual, it's all an idea. So just throw out the thought and just look everything from as it is. Because when you see everything as is, you see the magic which everything is, man. Like, everything is magical. For me, everything is magic. Like, if you don't put your intellectual understanding into everything and you just see everything without thought, without as it is, people walking, trees moving, birds chirping, the clouds flowing, man, it's all magical.
Yeah,
how is this all happening?
It's stuff? Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, what is it? It's how is it even happening? Like, we've been designed to give everything a label and thought because of our education, but man, just remove everything like a baby. Let's go back to being a baby. When we had no knowledge about it and we were just experiencing life as it is, as a pure conscious experience. You see, everything is absolutely fantastical. It's the biggest magic show ever. I mean, how incredible could it be? It's a mind-blowing, mind-altering madness play, drama circus going on, which is full of magic. I mean, even if you look at us, bro, like, we wake up in the morning, we don't have to see, oh, how's my liver? Oh, how's my lungs? Are they in their place? How's my stomach? How are my cells doing? Nothing. We just go into the washroom, get dressed up, whatever, and we're just functioning. Everything else inside has been taken care by an intelligence.
Yeah, I think about them a lot.
Yes.
The blood cells and all the, like, Team Michael. It's massive. There's like billions and billions of them. It's crazy. Thanks, guys.
Seriously, man. I mean, like, yeah, and they're all doing their own thing, and we don't even have to interact with one cell and say, hey, how you doing? Are you okay? We just like taking in food as form of energy, and they're doing the rest. They're crunching it down into like whatever like energy forms they need, and they're processing it. I mean, everything is so designed in the most mind. I don't know. I'm out of words, man. Like, every time I try to describe what reality is or what the nature of reality is, you just go out of words, because the human-made construct of language cannot describe this phenomena. Like, all this phenomena which is happening is indescribable. It's beyond our capacity to comprehend, understand, and evaluate even.
Yeah, I remember I wrote a quote down from Adi Da, because Adi Da is
and you're so amazing with names, I have to say that.
Oh, Adi Da is like, he's a guru figure, but he's also a painter. He was like, a big abstract painter in the Venice Biennale. And,
okay.
His work is fascinating because he's really trying to get at it from this place of there being no perspective.
Wow.
Like,
I need to check him out. I've never heard of him.
Oh my God, really? Like, Baba Friedjon was one of his aliases, but yeah, this guy Adi Da,
okay,
very much a part of this sort of contemporary non-dual tradition. And
okay.
He said about one of these abstract paintings, he said, words can refer to it. They cannot describe this, but they can refer to it.
Yes.
And so I think it's a great way to talk about,
yes,
bring it back around to your art and like why you do what you do, And
like, even like things which we can describe, are they truly what we are describing them? For example, this desk on which the computer is there, I would say, because of the knowledge I've gained, I would say, oh, this is a rectangular desk with 3 or 4 planks of wood, and it's this shape and this color. But is it truly for what it is? Is it truly that, or is it something which we are deriving, or we're trying to process as information? Are things truly the way they truly are, like the way we describe them? Even if you look at that from a surface level, it does not make sense, like for things how they truly are. And something which I really wanted to refer back to our previous conversation as well. I mean, something which really blows my mind. Man, we keep changing as well. Not just like on a biological level, but on a surface level. Like, as a person, Michael, 2 years back, was absolutely a different person than who he is right now. And Archan, who was even like 6 months back, was completely different from who I am right now. I am probably a collection of obviously my stories and memories, but also the knowledge which I have been gaining through itself, through its own discovery. And aren't we constantly changing? So if we are changing, that means we are not who we are. Like, it's not a permanent identity. It's not something which is stable. If we are changing, we are unstable. But something which is always there, which is always stable, is pure conscious spirit, which is always there, which is always conscious. The conscious spirit is always there in each of us, conscious of every activity happening. And that is what is the most incredible thing about God. Not the figurative God, but the spirit. That it has manifested into everything, and it is looking to everything, through everything, it's through itself, and experiencing itself through everything. And it's just conscious, and it's untouched. Even if the body dies, the mind dies, the consciousness does not die. It's always there. It'll manifest into another form, and then it'll create another identity. But I mean, it's incredible how it's implanted into every form. And because as a human, we see that the structure of God, spirit, has to be a certain way. That there has to be a creator and there has to be a creation. But why? It's not so naive that it'll create itself separately. It's far more intelligent that it's created itself inside itself and experiencing itself through itself.
Definitely agree with you on this point. Dude, it's we're right at an hour, before we wrap this up, I want to give you an opportunity to indulge me in a ridiculous intellectual exercise, because here we are, quite clearly inhabiting the boundary or horizon. I guess it better would be to say the horizon of this rolling now, right? That's constantly devouring and giving birth to itself.
That's so beautiful what you said. The rolling now. Yeah, exactly. It's always rolling, right?
So, on the one end of this rolling moment is a horizon we'll call the future, and on the other end of the rolling moment, like east and west is the past. So we know that by discussing sending messages to the future or past, we're talking spatially rather than temporally, and that the temporal part of this is just a communication convenience. But all that said,
yes,
what do you want to say to the people that you imagine will hear this one day after you have died, the people that were born after you died? What could you possibly commit to those people, transmit to them right now?
Man, I feel that by the time someone is listening to this, say 100, 200, 300 years from now, I'm sure as a species we would definitely be a very much more evolved. Either we would not be there, one, or we would be a very evolved species. And by evolved, I would say not just technologically, but consciously as well. And right now, how I feel that how everything is a matter-only model, science would have come to a space where it will be a consciousness-only model, like that everything stems out of consciousness. And the universe was not made because of matter, and that matter made consciousness, but that consciousness made matter. And that everything, every matter, every universe, every galaxy, whatever, every experience is basically experienced in a conscious experience. So I'm sure that people who are listening to in the future would definitely be, the fundamental science would be based around that, everything is consciousness. So for them, this conversation would be like, oh, wow, our primitives used to think like this and they were discovering themselves. This is so fascinating. What a history class. This is crazy. I mean, how are they even thinking that everything is matter? This is insane. This is amazing. We need to think how primitive we need to look into this. We need to look into how our primitive minds were. But I mean, I'm sure there would be contrasts at that point as well. New problems with new societies and new civilizations, with new futuristic civilizations would definitely bring on new problems as well. But I just want to say that the core would be, because there will be so many people, I would just want to say that people should just keep discovering who they truly are, keep contemplating, keep self-inquiring, and be in awe of this majestic reality, existence, to be blessed with and to be part of, and to just express themselves in whatever way they want to, whether it is through a conversation, whether it is through a beautiful podcast, or through painting, or through working out, or any way they would like to. But I think contemplating existence is the most incredible, the biggest discovery we can do. I mean, that is what excites you, Michael, right? I mean, I can feel it every time I listen to you, or I speak to you. And I mean, that is what excites me, because you just can't ignore the fact that existence is the most bizarre, the most mysterious, but at the same time the most incredible, magical experience everyone is having. And I feel that doing something you enjoy doing and through which you're passionate about really brings that to the surface, that makes you go deeper. I mean, art for me is just not a tool. I'm sure for you as well, it's just not a tool to, show or share with the world. Of course, that's an integral part of it. But I think through art, we're so in tune with the present moment that we're not really thinking about the past and the future. We are really present, and that makes us go deeper. And what are these states of minds where we can really tune in and go and ask ourselves who we truly are? And it always comes back to the fundamental question of who we truly are. And, it never gets boring. And from that comes out like different aspects of reality, of virtual reality, of science, of biology, of macro and micro relationships, of everything. And yeah, that's where it all stems out from. And I feel that, I'm sure in the future there will be so many more distractions by the way this fractal is expanding. But I think it's so important to come back to your source and to be centered and to be just still for a moment, and to just reflect back upon from where is everything coming out from. Because distractions will not lead you to anywhere. They're just this loop which keeps infinitely going on. But it's so important to look at everything, accept everything for what it is, but look at everything from the source, that the spirit is manifesting into everything. And I feel that is what I really want to share. I notice a lot of people being, like being hammered by their psychological self, which is only a product of their own journey and nothing else. And I think it is very important to really look into it and really inquire what it truly is. What is its true nature? Is the psychological self truly there? Or is it just a figment of stories and imagination and language? And who we truly are is the spirit manifested into this. So if pain comes, accept it. If joy comes, accept it. Nothing is permanent. But this consciousness, which is experiencing all these, activities, is always permanent. It's never going. It's always there. It's never fluctuating. So yeah, man. It's amazing. This has been such an incredible conversation. I woke up, I was so excited to, have a conversation with you, because I knew it's going to go deep, and I'm fired up for the day. It's early morning here, 9 o'clock, and I'm super fired up for the day.
I'm so glad. Yeah, over here, it's almost 10 p.m., and I was getting kind of tired, and now I'm all jazzed up. It's been great. I really appreciate it. Archan, where can we send people to check out your amazing work?
For sure, but I wanted to ask you one more question.
Yeah.
You've been asking me questions, but I want to ask you a question because I'm really fascinated.
Okay.
2 questions actually. One, I'm really, really blown away by the way you remember names, because I'm so bad with it. But like you remember names of people and what they do so amazingly. Was this something you were gifted with? One question. And second, right now, what is it that is really, really fascinating you, which is blowing your mind, which you probably haven't shared with your viewers, which is really, really fascinating you, and which you keep contemplating and thinking about, or having conversations with your inner circle all the time? So yeah, these 2 questions before we say goodbye.
Yeah. Well, I make a point of remembering names. I work at it. I work really hard at it. And I think I do have a natural disposition to it, but I do think that it's also, you can take care of your brain with nootropic supplements. You can work on memory exercises. I think that's very important. Brain care, brain and eye care. I think,
Yes.
People don't think about exercising all of these things and how it's just like your legs or anything. You continue to exercise these things as you get older. As to your other question, right now I'm in coloring book world. Actually, I just started. I think it's not really a secret. It's not a surprise, but it's a surprise to me because, like I said, this is all very new to me, and I'm enjoying being delighted at moving into more digital work with an iPad and also with a laser cutter that I've been waiting on for 2 years since I pre-ordered it. The Glowforge laser cutter came in the mail today finally.
Whoa, awesome.
So like thinking about design rather than just painting, thinking about layering ornamental elements on objects and this, breaking out of the frame as an artist and starting to look at the whole world in a new way of like, I could put that in the laser cutter, like I could, the thing's got a camera inside of it. So through the iPad, I can draw directly onto the item and have it trace the path and cut what I drew through the camera. So it's like this whole process of the boundary between what I have in my mind and a physical object is starting to come down. It's starting to become user friendly in a way that I'm finding really fascinating, and I'm just really thrilled at all the stuff that's possible for us now as individual artists, and like rising to the challenge of going through, like watching the tutorials and getting excited about learning this stuff rather than afraid of it. It's like it's embarrassing. It's like, if I were 10 years younger, I would have probably grown up with an iPad in my hands, and like never had this resistance. But so that's where I am now. Is just, being like, fuck it, I'm not too old. Let's do this. Let's go. It's time to change. Everything's changing. Relax, let go, and float downstream. So. Yes,
and let the results come out on the way. I mean, whatever they have to, and just accept them the way they are, and it's all going to be amazing. I mean, the journey is what is the most beautiful, right? The process when you're in that moment. And man, I'm going to pick your brains for the laser cut. I want to know more about it because I've never heard about it before. So I'm going to message you separately and ask you about it. So and the brain memory thing is so amazing. Wow, that you put an effort into like remembering them. That's incredible. Because I was always fascinated that, I mean, how do you like come up with names? That's something which like.
Well, I only bring up the same 5 books every. It's like Douglas Rushkoff's Present Shock, Kevin Kelly's The Inevitable, Eric Davis's Technosis, Stuart Brand's Clock of the Long Now. I feel like there's a Michael Garfield drinking bingo that you could come up with like Michael Phillip at Third Eye Drops. I think you've been on his show, right? I think or Midwest Reel. He mentions ontological every episode. Like he drops that word in at every opportunity. So I was just like, it's like that. I think it's just you just got to find the references that are obscure enough that you seem like you're really smart. It's just a trick. I've tricked everyone.
And I think. And man, like something which you said, I mean, we live in such amazing times at this point that, I mean, there's so many avenues and there's so many tools which we can explore and, mix, match and create, like how you got the iPad and then you got the laser cutter and how you're going to combine them.
Yeah.
And both of them are like absolutely new mediums for you, like in the sense that like you're more, I mean, in the sense that the iPad is a new, like you're going to be drawing directly on that and the laser cutter. And how are you going to combine these technologies with your immense knowledge of painting and bringing like evolving that into like something absolutely new, which is insane. I was doing a live stream a few days back, and there's this app which I wanted to download on the iPad. It's called Clip Studio. It was so basically Clip Studio was formerly Manga Studio. So basically, a lot of these Japanese manga artists used to use this. I started using this on my desktop about 6 months back, and I absolutely fell in love. Like far more advanced than Photoshop, and like absolutely amazing. Like it's incredible. And they released that same desktop app on the iPad, like exactly the same. Like they did not cut down anything. It's 6 months free right now, and then they have a subscription service later on, which I hope they don't go for it, and it's a paid model. But I mean the iPad version, you use the pen tools in that, and you can create some really intricate drawings out of it, and then you can color them like a coloring book. So I was basically going in flow. Yeah, so I was going in a flow and creating an artwork, and while the live stream was going on, I was actually coloring it. So someone asked me about the coloring book, and I was like, man, I'm actually creating coloring books. Like I'm drawing all these spaces, and then I'm coloring inside them. So you can do your own coloring book. Like you can first draw like crazy abstract elements, and then you can color them inside. And they have these beautiful watercolors and stuff, and like different kinds of watercolors, and they're absolutely magical.
Right on. Yeah, I'm downloading it right now, actually. So right on, dude. Well, before this turns into an app store commercial, where can we send people to check out your artwork?
So I'm the most active on Instagram and Facebook. I also use Twitter and Tumblr. I mean, I usually post on every social network. And you can also find me on my website, archan.net. But I'm the most active on the social media, and I update my site every 6 months or something. So Instagram, Facebook, Twitter would be the best ways.
Awesome. Yeah. Man.
Yes.
It's such a treat to talk to you. Let's do it again. And
yes.
I hope that you have a most inspired and magnificent day. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, bro. Really appreciate it. Such an honor. Thank you.
Thanks again for listening. I hope you enjoyed that episode as much as I did. Future Fossils is part of the MindPod Network, along with Third Eye Drops, the Astral Hustle, Synchronicity Podcast, and an oodle of other fascinating programs. I encourage you to go to mindpodnetwork.com and subscribe to them all. And stay tuned, because we have some awesome episodes coming up on Future Fossils. But for now, may your now be exquisite, long, and wonderful.